Hey Bill, can you hear me? Bill, can you hear me?
Cindy, I don't think they have it on yet.
Okay, you can hear me though, Karen, right?
I can hear you. Yep.
Okay, good. I was a little worried there.
Yeah, I just don't think they have the sound on yet.
Okay. Hey Karen,
Yes.
can you hear a lot of like car noise from my car or not?
No, you're fine.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah, it says over by the environmental house. There's only one in my room. Is real pleasure. I mean, he's listening, he doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey Karen, hi Cindy, can you
Yeah,
hear us?
it's one of those things.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that you didn't enjoy it. And you're doing.
Yes,
I can
we-
hear.
it
I
miserable.
can hear you. Can you see the screen
Fine.
still?
But if you. Yeah, if you enjoy it, it's a good way to make it. Especially.
Can you still see the screen?
It's a pretty good.
I can.
Okay.
Reshare, it's on share and then reshare. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Cindy, can you unshare and then reshare?
Can you see it now, Bill?
I can. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Can we all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance before we begin tonight's meeting?
Pledge allegiance to,
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience tonight and for coming to the March 16th Planning Commission meeting for the City of Credit River. As you can see, we have two new commission members with us tonight, Thane Tandy and Calvin Casey. Welcome, both of you. I look forward to working with you as I think I can say the same, Steve and Amy.
Absolutely.
So very good. Thank you for volunteering your time to sit on the commission. And I look forward to working with you as well. So if we could move on to tonight's agenda. All commissioners should have received a copy of tonight's agenda. On it, we have the Planning Commission reorganization, which entails selecting the chairperson and the vice chairperson to hold those positions for the rest of this year. The consent agenda, we have one public hearing related to a proposed preliminary plat for the Holman addition. And under general business, we have a discussion of a concept plan for the Prince property. Am I saying that correctly? Prince? Okay, very good. Does any commission member want to add or amend anything on the agenda tonight?
No.
Okay, great. Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion by Amy. Is there a second? Seconded by Thane. All in favor of approving tonight's agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. All, any opposed? Motion to approve tonight's agenda is carried. So moving on to the next item on the agenda, and that's Planning Commission reorganization. Per ordinance 2104 and amended by ordinance 2205, section 243A states that at the first meeting and thereafter at the first regular meeting in January, the Planning Commission shall elect a chairperson, a vice chairperson from among its appointed members, each for a term of 1 year. We did not have a planning commission meeting in January. And because we had two open seats that weren't being filled until March, we're waiting until this meeting to conduct that selection. So I looked up Robert's rules. I'm going to try and follow those because I'm not sure I did that last time. I don't even know, we didn't have a chair to work on that last time. So tonight I'm going to ask, we're going to ask to select officers per Robert's rules. There are no seconds required, so we're only asking for a motion. We're going to start out with the chairperson. So can I get a nomination for chairperson?
Mr. Chair, I would move Bill Markert as chair.
Thank you. We have one motion for Bill Markert as chair. According to Robert's rules, I need to ask this 3 times. So are there any other nominations for chair? Are there any nominations for chair? One more time. Are there any nominations for chair? Hearing none, nominations for the office of chairperson are closed. Bill Markert has been nominated for chairperson. Can I get a motion to select to serve as chairperson of Credit River Planning Commission?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion by Steve Wolf. Is there, I don't need a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve Bill Markert as Credit River Planning Commission chairperson is carried. Congratulations, Bill. All right, let's move on to selecting a vice chairperson. Can I get a nomination for vice chairperson?
I would make that nomination for Amy to maintain her position as vice chair.
I have a motion to have Amy Olson serve as vice chairperson. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Are there any nominations for vice chair? One more time, are there any nominations for the office of vice chairperson? Hearing none, nominations for the office of vice chairperson are closed. Amy Olson has been nominated for vice chairperson. Can I get a motion to select Amy Olson to serve as vice chairperson for the Credit River Planning Commission?
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion by Calvin Casey. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion to approve Amy Olson as Credit River Planning Commission Vice Chairperson is carried. Congratulations, Amy. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. Those items on the Planning Commission agenda, which are considered routine or non-controversial, are included as part of the consent agenda. Unless a Planning Commission member specifically requests that an item on the consent agenda be removed and considered separately, items on the consent agenda are considered under one motion, second, and vote. Any item removed from the consent agenda shall be placed at the end of general business. Before I ask for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, I would like to make an amendment to it by striking 3.1, which is a duplicate of 3.2. The only thing on the consent agenda tonight is the February 16th, 2023 meeting minutes. And I think I can just say, we don't have to move that down to general business. We'll just approve it. It's just the meeting minutes from February 16th. So can I get a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda with that amendment?
So moved.
I have a motion by Amy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Thane. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion to approve the consent agenda is carried. Thank you. Next on the agenda, I have public hearings. So tonight's agenda, we have a public hearing related to a preliminary and final plat application for the Holman addition. Commission members have received a number of items related to this application. We have a staff report from City Planner Cindy Nash dated March 10th. We have an existing survey of the Holman addition. We have a letter from the Scott County Transportation Department dated March 15th, a preliminary plat for the Holman addition, and a final plat for the Holman addition. Before I open up the public hearing tonight, I'm going to ask City Planner Nash to summarize the applications that are in front of us. Cindy, I hope you can also clarify, at least for me, whether this public hearing tonight is to address the preliminary plat, final plat, or both. And also if you can clarify whether I need to have a vote on both of them or just the preliminary plat because the city council votes on the final plat. So with that, Cindy, could you take us through what's going on here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll start with your clarification first. So the Planning Commission is just asked to consider the preliminary plat this evening. Because they did apply for both at the same time, I did include them both in your packet so you can see what they look like. But you are just asked to make a recommendation on the preliminary plat.
Okay, thank you.
So what this is an application for a preliminary plat consisting of land that consists of about 31.72 acres. It's located on the east side of Texas Avenue and on both the north and the south side of Longview Lane. The portion of the property that is shown on the north side would be Lot 1, Block 1, and it contains the existing house. The portion on the south side is an outlot, which before anything could happen with an outlot, it would need to be further developed. So an outlot does not give anybody any building rights or anything like that. What this action would do this evening, if ultimately approved by the city council, would be to basically just split the two pieces of the property from each other so that they each have their own PID and can be sold separately from each other. So there are no proposals for development this evening other than just the ability to sell them separately.
Okay, very good. Anything else?
Nope, I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have.
Okay. Is there anyone from the Holman edition that would like to make, is anyone a representative of them here tonight? Okay, very good. I'm then going to open up the public hearing. The public hearing is an opportunity for residents to provide comments pertaining to this application. We did receive one written email, one written comments, and I think it went to you, Cindy, and you addressed those comments. Can you tell me if you received any response related to those?
I answered some questions that arrived via an email. I have not distributed those questions to the planning commission.
Okay,
I was told that they would be in attendance this evening.
okay, great. Okay, are there any residents here tonight that are present that would like to comment? And if you would like to comment, would you please approach the podium, sign your name and your address, and make your comments?
Did you say residents or anybody who wants to speak?
Anyone that wants to speak related to this application?
My name is Ron Schmidt, and I'm a 30-year resident, 35-year resident. And I own the land that is on the east side. And I don't know, sometime years ago, this land, we've owned it for probably at least 20 years. My concern is that there is a.
If you could stay at the mic, that way Cindy can hear you. If you can stay at.
Yeah, they can't hear, so
On the that would be north, on the north end of that lot, which is on the east side of that outlot, the bigger piece of the.
yeah, the outlot is the bigger piece, yep.
That's a 10-acre piece. Right there on the north border of it, bordering the road, the ditch. There's a line that probably was an error and it's never been corrected. At one point, I believe it's right at the road right away. At the other end, it's 10 feet short. I'd like to get that resolved before the Holmans are out of this land. And I'll admit, I should have done it a long time ago, but I just assumed that it was probably an error of some sort. I'm not sure that it was or wasn't, but it doesn't seem like there's any good reason for that piece of land to be short on the road right away. Right now, there isn't road right away on that piece of ground.
Okay,
At least not the entire.
So are you speaking of that 10-foot? Is that the same 10-foot area, Cindy, that you spoke to in your notes?
No, I did mention this 10-foot area in my notes as well. The one that the city engineer and I were in particular commenting on is on the northern side of Longview Lane. I can zoom in here, so it's maybe a little bit more evident.
I don't know who has a title to that, whatever feet it is, that sliver of land right now. I'm assuming that it's all.
So according to the title commitment, this 10-foot sliver that Mr. Schmidt is referring to is owned by, is part of the parcel that's being split. So we did reference this 10-foot sliver in our comments that it would be nice to see that addressed. The one that staff is more concerned about is the one on the northern side. You can see east of the plat that Longview Lane is a 66-foot wide right of way, and you can see the right of way line here, but then it dips down 10 feet. And as it goes between these two parts of the property, it's only 56 feet wide. So we would like to see 10 feet of land on the north side dedicated as right of way, so it lines up with what's already going on with Longview Lane to the east.
okay. How does the planning commission tonight though address this 10-foot sliver of land when that, I know that you recommended that you asked that the applicant consider either dedicating that or selling it. Does that have to happen with our, as a condition of our approval? It sounded to me like that was not something that we were going to address.
We made it as a recommendation and not something that has to be addressed. There's pros and cons to either dedicating it as right of way or to otherwise dispensing of that, selling it or whatever to Mr. Schmidt.
Mhm.
That though would involve also combining that 10 feet with his property so that we don't have a standalone 10-foot non-buildable sliver of land sitting out there, there's other considerations to be made on that. And we feel like that is something that does not need to happen at this point in time, but we would like to see some resolution at whatever time that Outlet A may be developed in the future.
Cindy, does that 10-foot prohibit that piece of property next to the outlot from having direct access to Longview?
It prohibits it from having direct access to Longview, but it does have frontage on 210th.
It makes the piece a lot less developable. And there isn't any reason.
It makes your piece of land less developable. Have you approached the owner of that sliver of land and asked them to buy it? Okay, because to me, that would be just thinking out loud here. If you approach the person that owns that piece of property today, just ask them if you could buy that
Can
piece.
anybody tell me why that was ever done like that? Right now, that's just a hair short of a 10-acre piece. If you take that away, it's a 10-acre piece, which is what it was always portrayed to be to begin with.
I can't answer your question.
Holman is the one that developed. Holman is the one that broke that piece off from, I suppose, the rest of it.
I can't answer that question. I don't know. And I haven't talked to Mr. and Mrs. Holman or Mrs. Holman, so.
So Cindy, would you say that when this property was plotted and the road with Longview currently in its location, would you say that was just an oversight, that 10-foot most likely? Because I can't believe it would have been probably approved otherwise.
I can't speculate on that. I can tell you that you can see to the east, to the east of this property that we're talking about as well is the Blickfelt addition. So that is a plat with Longview Lane, and the portion of Longview Lane that is 56 feet wide was also platted at that same time. Now, when Mr. Schmidt's property was separated from the Holman property, that was done via a meets and bounds legal description and not a plat, which is one of those kind of descriptions that it's the east quarter of the south quarter kind of thing, and then gives a bunch of dimensions and directions. And in those situations, when land's carved off that way, we do frequently see these types of gaps occur. So I can't speak to why it happened, except to say that I'm not surprised to see it either.
Okay.
Cindy, do you have any recommendations for Mr. Schmidt in terms of how to resolve this? I know that you put it in as a recommendation to Mrs. Holman. I think it's Mrs. Holman, Cheryl Holman. To consider it. Did Cheryl say anything that she would do anything with that?
No, we have not received any feedback yet on their thoughts on that suggestion that they look into figuring out something so that 10 feet is not sitting there permanently.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
No, I just am going to recommend that be resolved. I don't really see a good reason to,
I'm not sure we can resolve it as a planning commission.
you can make it a part though of doing this plat. The city's already recommending it.
We're recommending that they do something with it, yes, but we're not telling them what to do with it. So
What is this
it might be easiest for you to talk to the applicant and I'm just thinking out loud again. I mean, and work it out that way. Or at least contact her and see what she has to say.
I had no idea who really still owns it.
Right.
I'm assuming that it's only because of the name of the flat.
Yeah.
Is that the same woman that lives next door?
It's my understanding that Cheryl Holman owns both of those properties, the one north of the road and the outlet south. Yes. As far as who owns that sliver, I assume it's Cheryl Holman owns that sliver as well.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment on this application tonight? Nobody? Okay, hearing no other comments, questions or concerns, but I'm going to close tonight's public hearing. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
I have a motion by Amy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Cal. All in favor of closing tonight's public hearing indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion to close the public hearing is carried. Other questions from planning commission members regarding this application? I have a couple, but I'll hold off on mine until other people have theirs.
Mr. Chair, as far as when I look at this, I think if there's a time to resolve that 10 feet, its time is now before this preliminary is granted.
Mhm.
So the question is to why? Once this is granted and that lower part of that land gets sold. I don't know, Cindy, you can correct me if that 10 feet goes with this outlot. And if it does, if I'm the property owner that has just spoken, if that owner of that outlot, the developer wants to sell that 10 foot, if I'm that developer, I want to maximize the value, and I'm going, in some ways, I've got this guy hostage. I hold the 10 feet.
Yeah.
And if he wants to develop his land in the future, he's going to pay what it takes because I own it, he doesn't. And I think for us to deal with this issue now is better than trying to deal with it in the future. That's just my thoughts.
That makes perfect sense to me. There's nothing against us asking that with this application, recommending approval of this application with a condition that gets resolved before the application is approved, right, Cindy? There's nothing that prevents us from doing that.
The planning commission can make whatever recommendation that it wants to make. It is probably a little more complicated than it sounds to figure out a way to address it, and will take some amount of time. The outlot A is proposed to be developed at some point in the future. And it would go with outlot A, and it's something that can be addressed at that point in time.
It was too late.
Yeah, Cindy, from trying to be fair to all property owners present. At that point in time, the preliminary has been approved, and it just makes it harder from the prospective owner on toward the east there. My question.
Well, maybe if I may interject, at the point in time that outlot A would develop, there will have to be another preliminary and final plat.
So if we continued this subject for 30 more days till our meeting next month and give this homeowner who has spoken a chance to it sounds like they really haven't, he probably came here looking for us to resolve the issue where we would prefer he resolves it with the property owner, the Holmans. Could we continue this for 30 more days to give him an opportunity to reach out to the Holmans and try to come to a satisfactory solution to this problem, knowing that the preliminary has been held up because of it? It might be fair to all parties involved.
Well, again, this would just facilitate the sale from Ms. Holman to a developer of outlot A. Outlot A later would need to have its own preliminary plat done, and this could be resolved at that time. I don't know that we are in a position to tell somebody that they need to, we have to act on applications in a certain amount of time. And there isn't anything about this situation at the moment that is against an ordinance or anything like that. So that's why we recommended that they start working on figuring out a way to deal with it, but we also know it can come up later, and that should give them enough time to either come to a resolution or not.
So when it comes up later and there's a preliminary plat for the outlot, that's it. That's the time where there's a condition on that plat to resolve that issue.
But again, it may not, there's a possibility it won't get resolved.
Okay.
We can't hold up somebody's plat indefinitely
Take it out.
if it meets the ordinances.
So is there a time frame or a time limit that will exceed the next 30 days to try to find resolution to this between the two property owners? I don't think as a planning commission, you're absolutely right. legal obligation or legal authority to force two people to come to some sort of agreement. There isn't any, nor should we have that. So would they be outside of the 30 days if we were going to continue this for one more month? If they can't find a resolution to this issue in 30 days, well, then we will, as a planning commission, be making some sort of a recommendation. But I'm just trying to ask Cindy if
Yeah,
there would be aware to be a.
We, under 1599, you have plenty of time, so you could table this if you wanted to. We're not under a time frame that, you know, that you have to act on it yet.
Thanks, Cindy.
Anybody else?
Cindy, with this, if there's a discrepancy on this and Probe Engineering has done a survey, wouldn't the best thing just be to have that surveyor meet with the county to know where the monuments are, to see who actually, where the land's at? Wouldn't that be the first step?
So, well, the surveyor would have prepared this plat based on the title commitment that was obtained for Ms. Holman's property. Now, there are sometimes, and I'm not saying that's the case here at all, sometimes you will find with meets and bounds descriptions, there may be overlapping surveys, and that would be upon Mr. Schmidt to hire his own surveyor and do his own title commitment to determine if there is any overlapping boundaries, and that would be considered a private property concern for them to figure out and address, but it's not something that that we would make the other developer do. Now, at the time, just so you know how the process actually works, once the final plat has been approved, the surveyor sends the final plat to the county surveyor for what's called plat checking. And at that point in time, the county surveyor would advise if there was any errors that they saw that would need to be addressed. But right now, based on the information available, we don't have any reason to think there's an error.
The public hearing is closed, so you're not really in order to. I'll allow you to speak. If it's just a question, your
I
clarification.
want to say that I've owned this land 20+ years. I have never seen that line straight across like that. It's always been in an angle. So I can tell you that you've got to be more than one survey.
Right,
I've never seen it straight, whatever they said, 10 foot across, never seen it.
right,
It's not the plot, it's not the drawing that I.
right.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a recommendation if we are to that point.
Yes, can you hold on to that recommendation? I
Absolutely.
just have a couple questions for
Sure.
Cindy. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I sent
Yeah.
Cindy a couple of questions earlier and
Did you,
for some clarification, and I think,
they've resolved?
yeah, I think it in terms of what I was curious about, in addition to this 10-foot strip.
Okay. The only question I have is why was the Longview Lane only platted at 56 feet when our standard is 66? I mean, is that just because it's really old? And
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't speak to why that was allowed to occur. I have no idea. We did, both myself and the city engineer checked the plat for the Blickfeld edition, and that certainly was the case. We can see that normally we also put the pavement for the right of way centered within the right of way.
yeah,
The pavement is actually in that section of Longview Lane. The pavement is off center. So the appropriate location for it to come to make it all be in center and line up would be from the north side.
why didn't the city have right away that the southern part of that lot 1? Why didn't that have right away before? 10
No idea.
Okay,
Sorry, I have no way of knowing. The plat's pretty old.
yeah.
So we don't have any records on what happened then or why.
Okay, and then just a clarifying question. So we don't ask for a park dedication with this application, but we would ask for one when the outlot A is developed. Is that consistent with what we always do when a landowner is splitting their property, that the part that they keep with their home on it, that doesn't have any park dedication fees that they have to pay?
Correct. The existing home is basically considered to have met that at some time in the past. So
Oh.
we would, even if this was 2 lots, for the sake of example, if this was 2 lots, they would be charged for 1 park dedication unit. The existing house and lot would not be charged one, and that's consistent with what we, I guess I'm not sure that we've actually had that come, yeah, we have had that come up with some of the smaller ones that have occurred on Nevada Avenue, where they've paid 1 or 2 additional, depending on how many lots they were creating.
Okay,
Cindy, one question for me. That 10 feet that's in question here. Would it be a simpler solution? Not that we're offering any. But to these 2 homeowners, if they could agree that that 10 feet would be deeded to the road right away. So that in the future, if that road is expanded to 66 feet, at least in this section, it's a non-issue for the property owner who's here present today. He has his road access without, it's become road right of way. And there's not any monetary going back and forth. So my question is, could it, if they decided to, could they suggest that 10 feet be deeded to the road right, to the road? Longview Lane?
Yes, if the city council was willing to accept what would ultimately then be a 76-foot wide right of way, yes, that would be a possible solution. And I think I specified that in my recommendation that they consider doing one or the other. We would not require it though, because the area that we actually need is to the north and not the south.
Right, okay.
any other questions? And otherwise I'll take your recommendation, Steve. What is it?
Well, my recommendation would be to grant no longer than another 30-day extension or until our next meeting for the 2 property owners to resolve this issue. And if they have not at that time, we would make a recommendation on this proposal, one way or the other.
For clarification, are you thinking, Commissioner Wolf, of tabling it or till our next meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, just to give these, sounds like these 2 property owners have not really got into any serious discussions. And this allows 30 days to do it. As long as we're not overrunning any kind of a time frame to exceed. I just think for down the road, rather than kicking this can, knowing that it's going to have to get addressed, I would prefer and feel a lot more comfortable with addressing it over the next 30 days between the property owners and not coming back to us saying we decide.
I like that idea.
I'm nodding my head in agreement here. As long as this is not going to invoke or go past the statutory requirement. And Cindy, just to clarify, my understanding of that for the other commissioners too, the whole process needs to take place within 60 days. So that means that our recommendation would need to go to the council within that time frame as well for their consideration and approval or denial. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. A decision has to be made and it would actually be up to 120 days that the city would have.
Okay, so knowing that, I would, if there's a motion on the floor, I would second it.
Okay, can I get a motion to table tonight's discussion, to table this application for 30 days or until our next meeting, which is scheduled for April? Do I have a motion to do that?
I'll make that motion.
A motion by Steve to table this application. Do I have a second?
I can second that.
Seconded by Amy. All in favor of tabling this application to the April meetings, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Mr. Schmidt, I did hear that Cindy recommend maybe you get your own surveyor and have an updated survey done, but that's totally your choice between now and April's meeting. Or at least talk to, I think her name is Cheryl Holman, and see if you can't work something out.
So who is it that's in Florida that I'm getting mail from? Is that Holman's or is that Real? Oh,
Okay, so if you're getting an email from or phone calls from Florida, it could be Karen Donovan, our city clerk. Cindy Nash is our city planner here in Minnesota. Okay. Okay,
Will do.
great, thanks. Thanks, everyone. The next item on tonight's agenda under general business is a concept plan for the Prince property. It's labeled subdivision of 18787 Hobby Hill Circle. Commission members should have received a staff agenda report from City Planner Nash dated March 16th, as well as 2 concept plan schematics, one being an aerial view. This is not a public hearing, so we will not be asking for any resident comments tonight. But we would like to open up the discussion by asking Cindy if you could summarize your memo with us. We'll then ask Mr. and Mrs. Prinz to come up to the podium and talk a little bit about anything you want to share regarding the application. So Cindy, you're up.
Thank you. So the Princes are interested in subdividing their property that is off of Hobby Hills Lane into 2 lots. So one that would have their existing home and then a second lot that they could sell. The property is zoned rural residential. That does permit lots of at least 2.5 acres. As you can see from the proposed sketch, they have plenty of property to be able to meet that requirement. They also have enough frontage on Hobby Hill Circle for each lot to have the requisite amount of frontage that they would have to have. There are a few issues and concerns with this plat that are outlined in the staff report. So the first is that Hobby Hill Circle is still a gravel road. It's not a paved road. And so we do require lots and new subdivisions to access on a paved street. The cul-de-sac itself for Hobby Hills is also not why it's not as wide as, say, a typical cul-de-sac would be. It's sort of a partial cul-de-sac. The right of way for it appears to be sufficient, but as far as what the construction of the cul-de-sac is, it looks a little short in that area. More of an issue is that the city owns an outlot, and I hope you can see my pointer on the screen, outlot B in Judicial Estates. And there's a couple outlots in that neighborhood when they were platted that were meant to be future right-of-way extensions and connections into other locations. So Judicial Estates today is Towering Oaks Curve and Trail, and they come in and they basically tee off into 2 cul-de-sacs with no other ways in and out at the moment. Hobby Hills of that neighborhood also, of course, does the same thing right now. It comes down and has 2 cul-de-sacs with no other way in and out of that neighborhood either. So the intent was that this outlot B would be developed as a road at some time in the future, and that it would go across, somewhere across the Prince property to create one of those connections through these areas. There's also land to the east that could still be further developed. It's a little even more complicated in the case of this Judicial Estates and this outlot B, because this lot that is right here that borders the very southwest corner of the Prince property is actually landlocked if it were not, if that outlot B road is never opened up and developed. The another interesting thing about this property in this area is that we talk occasionally about that long-term sewer service area that is set in the Met Council's regional plan. And there was a graphic in the staff report, but that long-term sewer service area boundary right now is basically the northern boundary line of the Prince property. So theoretically, at some point in the future, everything to the north would have water and sewer, and everything to the south would still be rural residential. That is something, that neighborhood is one that, because it's on the edge of that long-term sewer service area, and because it bisects that neighborhood, the city engineer and I have kind of flagged that neighborhood that when we update the comprehensive plan in a few years, you know, probably start that process about a little over 2 years from now and complete it 4 to 5 years from now, that is one location that we will want to look at to determine whether that's the appropriate line basically to draw between that sewered and that unsewered portion of the community. maybe it's fine as it is, maybe the whole neighborhood should be in it, maybe the whole neighborhood should be out of it. That's something we won't know and can't know until we do that comprehensive plan update in the future. And then the last thing that we brought to attention is that, again, the neighborhood that the Princes are in also only has the one-way in and out directly onto a county road. And we do try to have more connections for people to get in and out of neighborhoods than just one way. So with that, we are looking for your feedback. This is a concept plan. It's not a application for development. But to see what your preliminary thoughts are regarding whether maybe it's premature for this property to be subdivided, whether it's something that they could look at a variance related to the paving of Hobby Hill Circle, or whether they would potentially need to pave Hobby Hill Circle, whether right-of-way should be saved for that extension and connection from Outlot B and then going somewhere to the north. We would not be looking for you to say where that should go. That's something that if the subdivision were to come in as an application, would be an exercise that the city engineer would probably have to look into and figure out where that would need to be. And that's sort of generally, I guess it. So I think the Princes are there this evening and would like to talk about what they're hoping to do. And, but then we're just looking for your general feedback on
Great.
your thoughts on this.
Great.
Thank
Just a clarifying question before I ask them to come up. The purple section of your memo on the map here, it said
Yes.
that the city owns that land.
There's actually a red line that goes down through that
Okay.
drawing.
So
So
it's-
the city owns everything on the west side. That's that outlot that's
Yeah.
wide enough for a road to go through. The
Okay.
the east side of the red line is that landlocked lot.
Okay. So someone owns that property that could be
Yes.
developed someday.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Prinz, you want to come up, Mrs. Prinz?
For your time today. Yeah, I think Cindy did a great job just kind of summarizing our thoughts. But this is kind of a, exploratory exercise for us to see if we can move forward with potential lot split. Heather and I, my wife and I, own a 10-acre property here in Credit River Township. It's our primary residence. And so we would like to move forward with subdividing that lot and potentially selling. So not really much more to add. Pretty, our perspective is simple, but it sounds like there might be a little bit more hair on it. Yeah, that's all I have.
Before you leave the podium, are you comfortable with some of the things that Cindy talked about that we may have to do that might require you to take action?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think we are ready to proceed to kind of take the next steps to figure this out.
Okay.
I mean, I guess the one question that I would have would be the city road right of way. Was there ever a plan that showed where that right of way was supposed to go? Was it ever
I'm-
on record?
That's the piece, the
Yeah.
part of the land that's the road outlot B. I'm not aware of anything. Cindy, are you?
I'm not aware of anything. At the time that Judicial Estates was platted, Scott County was the planning authority. And if they did anything, we don't have any records of what those, what that kind of planning effort was
So right now.
for laying out a road.
Right.
Even if we had something, by the way, we frequently will look at and kind of re-update those kind of things because property owners might have different ideas and, even if it's showed originally in a certain location, a lot of times there can be some flexibility to move it to a different location, to make things a little bit better. So it's okay. I think that there isn't something older that is already laid out there.
You've been very helpful, by the way. Thank you. Been on the whole lot.
Yeah. Great. Okay, thank you, Mr. Prinz. We may ask you to come back up, or if you have any other comments as you're listening, please by all means come up. Any questions by commission members related to this concept plan?
So Cindy, the land, the parcel that's in judicial estates that could, in a sense, be landlocked here. Is that developable eventually? And could that, how many lots could that parcel produce?
Well, that's sort of the really unfortunate thing. That is actually already a lot. We're not sure why Outlot B was not required to be developed as a road when the rest of that one piece of it was platted as a lot, but it's basically platted as a lot that currently does not have access to an improved city street.
Do you own that? Do you know who owns that lot?
Meehan, isn't it?
Hell,
Yeah, Meehan's, I think is the name.
has he ever, that Cindy, do you know if he's ever approached the city about developing that?
I have heard that he has asked for that before and that the city in the past has said that, I think the request was more like, would the city give Outlot B to him so he could develop? And maybe Mayor Kostick or somebody might be there at the meeting as well and could shed some light on this. But I believe that the city had said that no, they wouldn't. They wanted to make sure that road could go through.
Okay.
Cindy, you mentioned about the road not being improved. That goes back to the current homeowner's property. Hobby Hills Circle.
Yeah. Oh, no, no, it's not, it's a gravel road. Yes.
Right. So in a sense, I was wondering what constitutes a new subdivision. So by the property owner subdividing that lot, I want to make sure that we don't start setting precedents of doing something here that is going to be unenforceable in the future. So are there many areas within the city of Credit River that have unimproved gravel roads to a homeowner, part of a development? They're looking to subdivide. And if we say that road does not have to be improved, what will that play out in the future for us?
So we have not had that scenario in a residential sense come up yet. We have had a situation come up where somebody asked for property to be rezoned to commercial. That was also on a gravel road. And we had discussion that because that road was not a 10-ton paved road, that that rezoning it was premature unless that developer improved that road to a 10-ton paved standard. So a little bit different fact pattern because it was commercial rather than residential, but a little bit similar as well.
So if I ask you to comment on that road, not us approving something here or saying that, yeah, it seems like it'd be a plausible idea and not having that road improved as part of the stipulation, will that come back to bite us in the future according to what you would feel?
Actually, yes. I mean, if you started approving subdivisions off of roads that are not to city standards, other people will ask for the same thing.
But is this really a subdivision? To me, it's
Yes.
a one lot's being split. And I was just wondering, can't they have a variance for this situation since it's not? You're saying it is a subdivision that would fall under subdivision regulations?
It is absolutely a subdivision. That's why they would have to come in with a preliminary plat and a final plat to do anything. So it is a subdivision.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm a homeowner like anybody else, and I would feel for your problem here about trying to improve that road in order to gain one more lot would make it unfeasible, and I understand that. And yet, because of that outlot situation to a piece of property that very well could come up for development at some point in time, that road that ends into the cul-de-sac at this person's driveway could very well need to be totally improved. And I think I just want to make sure, Cindy, that we're not kind of piecemealing precedents here. That we allow something here because it seems like it'd be a good idea, and then later on, something's presented to us with a different piece of property that be hard for us to turn anything down going forward on as far as improving a gravel road if there's going to be a subdivision provided, even though this is only a 2-lot considered subdivision.
Yeah, you know, there was another situation that you did look at the other year. Again, some similarities, but definitely not identical. You had somebody come in with a preliminary plat and a series of about 7 or 8 variances that were basically centered around the idea of they wanted to carve off lots, dedicate right of way, but not build a road. And that was something that the application ended up being withdrawn during the review process. But I think if memory serves correctly, while the city council did not have an opportunity to make a decision on it, I think it had already gone through planning commission, and the planning commission had recommended denial of their series of variances.
Correct. Prince?
Just the other comment that we had as one idea of not landlocking, excuse me, the other homeowner would be maybe gifting or deeding over the amount of land needed to put a cul-de-sac bulb in up there for future use. So we wouldn't pay for or do the improvement of the road, but that we would give the city enough land up there to put in a cul-de-sac bulb if that landowner ever wanted to do an improvement in the future, in exchange for, granting access for our, proposed access through Hobby Hill Circle. That's maybe just an additional item to consider if you guys, take that into consideration.
So what you're suggesting, or what you say might be an amicable situation, the solution to this would be that current cul-de-sac there could be extended down to where the outlot is and create a cul-de-sac further down, not created at this time, but at least deeded.
Right, so this is, our 10-acre piece, and we're proposing driveway access here to this outlot deed. The landlocked parcel in question is right here.
Right.
So I'm saying, deed over land to the city, basically in a combination with outlot B, so they could put in a cul-de-sac bulb eventually if they needed it. And that would not then prohibit future development for that landowner. So it's not like it's not saying he would have to develop or pay for that street today.
Right.
But if a future owner wanted to do that, you would have the land necessary to proceed with development.
But it sounds to me like outlot B was going to go through your property eventually.
Well, I guess.
Because
that's
to
the
get two ins and outs or whatever from that area,
Right, I
right?
mean, I guess that's the consideration, if that is eventually what's going to happen, there hasn't been a drawing that says that.
Right.
It's just a stub street to nowhere.
Right.
Or not even street, it's a stubbed road access. That the city owns. Wanted to add that.
Sure, thank you. Say, Cindy, why doesn't Hobby Hill Circle as constructed today doesn't meet the city standards? Why did we approve it? If it didn't,
Yeah, I can't speak to that. It's really old. So I suspect that it was, that it's just been there for a very, very long time. It also appears to have been kind of sequentially done with a lot carved off here and there along the way. Looking at some of the older plats and what's occurred out there. But generally it's just so old that it was, that it definitely doesn't meet current standards.
Yeah, I think Cindy, I understand what you're talking about with the long-term sewer service area. If there wasn't this issue with an improved road or the outlet, that would be less of a concern of mine, just because we're talking about probably the entire area that is already developed. So my main concern, I think, is just creating any kind of a landlocked situation. And I know where the outlot comes into this property does not make it very conducive to maybe connecting with Hobby Hill Circle. And yet, looking further ahead, I would be hesitant to landlock any property for future development. If I was that property owner, I would probably, with that it has an outlot on maybe the present survey. I don't know if I'd be too happy as that homeowner either, that property owner. And
Yeah,
as
and it could also have, not having the ability to get connect through and out a different way from this neighborhood could have potentially some long range impacts on whether, even if we keep that northern part of that neighborhood in the long-term sewer service area, fire code would only allow you to have no more than a certain number of lots off of a basically what will be one big cul-de-sac. You have to have another way in and out. And so it could also preclude other people from developing their properties in the future if you don't preserve those road connections.
Right.
So that, and I think a lot of my questions are really centered on the, around connectivity. So, you know, what precedent could we set intentionally or unintentionally as we look at the, you know, developments that have been constructed in this fashion? And there do seem to be a lot of them here in this city. For one reason or another, just the way that, you know, things have been developed, the fact that, you know, we probably have more comprehensive zoning and planning now than we had in the past. And so I think one of the things that I worry about or am cognizant of is that there's that potential that exists, and knowing that there may be needs for trying to connect those streets, even if it hasn't been planned at this point. Certain development would make that either more feasible or less feasible. And so, you know, those were some of the things I had posed when I sent those questions over email.
Yeah, and you know, it's really challenging because we'd have to lay out what a road configuration could look like to serve this area, to see what is needed and where it's needed.
And that's our responsibility, correct? Cities?
Well, you know, typically we'd probably have Shane do it. But because it's being done to facilitate or answer questions related to a proposed development, we would have Shane do it, but it would be charged back as an expense. So it wouldn't be, you know, the city doesn't spend time going through every area of the city and figure out ahead of time where roads might go or might not go. So,
So that might
you know,
be a
if they wanted to go
suggestion.
forward, yeah, if they wanted to go forward, we could have Shane, you know, spend some time and do that kind of work. You know, it certainly comes at a cost though.
Okay.
And you're saying that cost would be borne by the homeowner presenting his proposal for the subdivision?
It'd be Mr. Mrs. Prinz would have to cover that, right? Because they're the one.
Right, we
requesting.
would have to get a larger escrow and probably would have, you know, in the interest of keeping costs as low as possible, I would say I would suggest that should be done before more money is spent doing wetland delineations or septic work or anything like that. But, you know, at the ultimate, I think it would still be valuable information for the Princes to know if you're interested in trying to keep that connectivity, because that might make a difference to them just knowing that.
Right. And then the other thing that they would probably have to consider is the cost of improving the cul-de-sac and the road going into that subdivided property, correct? That would be their cost as well?
Typically, yes, any costs like that is something that would be the responsibility of the developer. Their relief there would be to ask for a variance and see if that would be approved.
But I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
but I thought you said earlier that this is considered a subdivision under, so it can be done
It
with
is.
with a variance.
So it is a subdivision. Anybody can ask for a variance from anything.
But then we open up a can of worms that everyone wants to ask for the same thing, correct? And that's what we try and.
If you
avoid.
grant it, yes.
Yeah,
And one of the findings that you're supposed to make when you're doing a variance, among other findings that occur, is that it's not being asked for economic reasons.
right.
So with that being said, Cindy, and I don't know if it's a topographical thing, but instead of taking this 10 acres and essentially having it pied off, could it be cut in half? To 5.5 and 4.5 or whatever, and not having to go through the headaches and expenses of Hobby Hill Circle and updating that cul-de-sac and then just getting an easement in through judicial. And then that could even open up a potential for easement on the Meehan property if that wanted to be subdivided. Is that an option?
No, because then, yeah, if you drew, say, a straight north-south line and asked for that to come off of the right of way on the south, it doesn't solve those connectivity questions. But two, that new lot would not have frontage on any kind of an improved road at all, unless Outlot B was improved to be a road as part of that action, and it would have to have enough frontage on it too to meet the ordinances, or we're looking at more variances again there.
Would Shane look at what Thane suggested though, when he's looking at this? If
Yeah, I'm
Princes
sure he
wanted-
would.
Yeah. So next step for the Princes are trying to figure out whether they want to spend some money to have this further looked at, because right now it sounds like there's a lot of hurdles and they're going to be hard to overcome. And there's still some open questions with the sewer and water and all that, but I think
There is, and those won't be solved anytime soon, because
Right.
that is a topic that is something that we have to look at on a global basis with the whole city.
Yeah,
So that is something that we wouldn't do until we
Yeah.
update the comp plan.
can you
but,
tell me why the line was drawn there? Why didn't it just stop at 185th? So,
No idea, sorry.
okay,
It was done a couple decades ago. So I just don't have any idea, unless somebody thought maybe the northern part would develop in high density housing or commercial or something. I have literally no idea.
okay.
Cindy, is that something that is ever likely to get reconsidered with Met Council, or is that just too much to speculate?
You mean where that line is?
Yes,
So the city can request that the line be in different places.
okay,
What we have to do is, we're told how much we need to accommodate, and we can choose where that's accommodated. So the city could, as part of our next comp plan update, we'll have to take a deeper dive into how do we actually serve parts of the city with water and sewer. And a likely or not likely, but a possible outcome of that is that we may discover that there's some locations that are maybe too small to serve or too expensive to serve, and maybe they need to come out. And then simultaneously, there might be some areas that make a whole lot of sense to serve if we're already serving some other area adjacent that maybe take their place. So that's kind of a next level analysis that has not occurred yet. In the past, there was some really high level analysis that got them to where that line is today, but we can basically take land out if we're putting other land in, is the short answer, and we have that kind of flexibility.
okay. One other quick question, just, as we are looking at some longer term planning coming up, can you refresh our memories as a body and for the public, what will kick off that next cycle of comprehensive planning? What is the schedule for that?
Yep, so in the fall of 2025, the city will receive what's called system statements from the Metropolitan Council, and that kicks that off. So those system statements will be those directions that tell us what we need to plan for. And then we have to complete our comprehensive plan update by 2028.
So it's looking like a 3-year process so that there is some significant time between now and when it kicks off and then time to completion. And that plan runs through 2050 is the target then?
Well, the target planning year would be 2050, but then every 10 years, we have to do that update.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. It just is helpful to kind of keep that in mind, and it's not always at the forefront for all of us.
Yep.
Okay, no actions for this tonight. Cindy, are you looking for our comments, or just basically we were just discussing this tonight?
If you have any comments, we'd appreciate them. The next step for this would be to put it on the city council agenda for comments as well.
To me, it doesn't sound like this is going to work the way it's drafted, and there's a lot more work that needs to be done by the property owner in terms of how we resolve the access to these properties. So to me, the next steps are the Princes need to decide whether they want to talk to Shane and have him do a study. To me, that would be the suggested step, but I don't think it would, based on what I heard tonight. I don't know how this works otherwise.
Yeah, and because 3 of the 5 members on this planning commission, even though it was a commercial development proposal that came in where we kind of forced the issue about upgrading a road in order to do what they wanted to do. And all of a sudden we come to this, even though it's not exactly the same. But again, what does our city require?
Right.
Currently?
Right.
And so to say, no, we required them to upgrade the road, but in this situation, and I feel for the Prince, I really do, as a property owner. But the fact is, some of this of what we are here to do is to maintain some continuity, some consistency within our city, so that even future people who are bringing their proposals to us already kind of have an idea what we feel and where we go from here. So that would just be my thought, is that echoing what Chairperson Bill has talked about. It's going to take some work on the Prince's part to kind of continue this if they choose to do so. And I think that would be where I would leave it.
Yes.
And I think I would just echo too, as a planning commission, making recommendations to the city council. One of the things that we all keep in mind are, how does this set precedent? And what could that impact be going forward for future development, and what it means in terms of both the city's liability and, and thinking just long term about, how do we plan holistically? And that's easier said than done, especially with as many things up in the air, and also, wanting to recognize, in respect the proposals that are brought before us by property owners. So I think it may be a little early for us to do more than to say, here are some of the current concerns that we see that would need to be addressed, and here are the things that we're thinking about and what we would be concerned about potentially setting precedent that we may not be able to plan for otherwise.
Anything else?
I just got a real quick question for Cindy. So I was just that lot that's gonna be landlocked. It looks like the property owner to the south is the same property owner, the Meehan property. Any idea why that was able to get subdivided?
No, unfortunately, I don't know. When the county platted that subdivision, there's a couple other of these outlots for roads that were not improved at that same time. There's also an extension of, I can't remember if it's Towering Oaks Curve or Towering Oaks Trail, that was supposed to carry through to the west, and connect in with a cul-de-sac in a neighborhood to the west. That was not required to be completed at that time either.
Sure.
So let me ask you something, Cindy. It sounds like there's a lot of issues with this area, the way it was developed. So is there a reason why the city wouldn't want to like try and figure all this out and maybe, well, I'm not asking the city to pay more than what we want to pay for, but I mean, to take a look at some of these issues. Otherwise, how is this land ever going to get developed?
Yeah, and that's where, you know, we don't typically take a look at these issues until there is a developer involved. Kind of no different than, you know, last month you heard from Mr. Kowalski regarding his proposed replat of some of the territory neighborhood. And obviously he has a lot of things to figure out too, right? Regarding the CSTS subordinate service district and all of that. So those, you know, it's a pretty typical thing that these issues, a light becomes shown on them, you know, as we start doing a little bit of the development review process, and then they're sorted out through that process. But we don't typically go out ahead of it and try to figure it all out. We've had a lot of requests from people to do so, that, you know, that we should be preemptively figuring out where roads should go and everything in other areas of the community. And it's just not something that that most cities do, except in extremely special situations, like maybe a development of an industrial park or something that they're trying to get. So a lot of times that isn't done until somebody wants to do something with their land.
Okay.
Yeah, Cindy, I understand your point, and I would agree with that. If we're gonna start going into all the multiple areas within our city boundaries, trying to figure out how roads work, and the property that adjoins this with the outlot, who knows what their plans are in the future and what that happens, and we kind of lock ourselves into a certain plan without really knowing the plan. And I just don't know at this point in time if that's a wise choice. And as far as what you were saying, getting out there and trying to solve all these issues, number one, we may hear from a few city residents that are not happy about having all their money spent to speculate on further development. And I do believe we have to kind of deal with this issue as it's brought forward to us from all property owners. So if these people would like to even talk to this other property owner, but even then, properties come and go, they change hands. And then everybody's got a different idea of how they would like to do something. And this was a 10-acre parcel being asked to be divided to create another lot. And for the property owner, if it was something as simple as no outlot, road, Hobby Hill Circle has already been upgraded, we just want to split our lot, it'd be a pretty slam dunk thing, even from us, because we want to respect property owners' rights too. But with this one here, and as Vice Chair Olson has talked about, we have to look at the city as a whole, and also the trying to make sure that we are being consistent in how we rule with every property that comes before us.
Okay, so more work to be done by the Princes, and you know to contact Shane if you want.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, great.
I guess just one final comment or question.
Would you mind coming up to the podium so Cindy can hear it as well?
Get my work on, and then I.
Yeah, you should have sat at that chair right there.
So, just so I understand before, we wrap everything up, so the likelihood of having a variance to gain access off of Hobby Hill Circle, basically what I'm hearing is that's probably not gonna happen.
Yes.
The variance for deviance from the requirement for improving.
Improvement,
Yeah.
Service.
Yes.
I think that's probably fair.
Okay.
Yep.
So the only access point, if we were to proceed with, again, talking to your engineers and things, would be coming off of the outlot. Is that correct?
Cindy, could you comment to that?
Yeah.
That would be my,
It's hard to comment to that. That's a maybe. I mean, I think that boils in with that bigger question too, of that connectivity of that road. Because even coming off of the outlot would require the outlot to be improved. to a city street standard.
I guess that's just the one position that we're in, where it's like, okay, we don't know where Outlaw B is going. But we're kind of being held hostage by not getting the variance off of Hobby Hill Circle. I guess, are we just hearing a no? Is that kind of what we're hearing? Or is it-
I think what you're hearing from us, it'd be pretty fair to say that we would not want to deviate from the rules that the city currently has as to future subdivisions and coming off of unapproved roads.
And for you to go to Shane if you choose and figure out a way to do it under our ordinances.
Okay, so Shane would be the next step.
And that would be my suggestion, to see if there's any, you could explain to them what what you want to do and see if there's any way to get it done under our existing ordinances
Okay.
without a variance.
Sounds good, guys, thank you.
Well,
so much.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Go
Cindy.
Yeah, the very next step will be that I'll put this on the city council agenda for Monday night. So the city council can provide comments and their feedback as well.
Okay, so did the Prince know that? Or is that how, that's just the way it works?
Well, that's the way it works, but I believe that when I talked to him last week, was the last time I talked to him, I think I said that if you guys took action or made a recommendation tonight, it would go to that next Monday's meeting.
Okay, but we're not really recommending anything. We're
No,
just.
I know. But
Okay,
that's what we do with concept plans. Is
Okay.
we give both the commission and the council the opportunity to provide some comments.
great. So can you be at the council meeting then? Because they may have questions for you as well. Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you. Cindy, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
I think we're all done then for the evening. I don't have anything else on the agenda. There is one person raising their hands, but it's kind of like out of order. It's not on the agenda.
First comments from the city that said 98 times tonight that's south. And I was here 5 minutes to 7 and now I'm not on the agenda. So I apologize if this got mixed up, but that's what I've got right here from you guys, 7 o'clock meeting.
I got the same thing. Which issue is that?
For the Holman property subdivision.
Cindy, I don't know if you heard that or not, but we have a couple of property owners, safe to say, that are here tonight, that the starting time for the meeting that they have, he showed it to us on his phone, was at 7 PM, not 6. Any idea how that might have happened?
No, not offhand. I'd have to do some looking to see how that would have happened.
Yeah, the two from, it came from, Cindy just filed a mistake, but it's an email from you to us 6 days ago that all of our escrows are in place, all of our requirements are here, and the meeting's at 7 o'clock tonight.
She can't, sir.
I could hear what he said. And
Okay.
I just don't know who's saying it is part of my problem. Sorry, and I apologize if I did that. I'm very sorry for doing that.
The meeting, the official meeting agenda says 6 o'clock is when the meeting starts. And
So Cindy, how do we move forward with this when we have a homeowner who is saying that at the meeting time that was posted and given to them an email was wrong? Is it okay to allow them to speak right now, or where are we at within there? What we should do as our meeting goes?
okay,
So
now he received a notice of public hearings and it's got the wrong time on it.
I don't believe anyways.
Yeah, it was tabled, Gary. We tabled it to talk about it next month at the next meeting. We didn't make any decision tonight because there was an issue with a sliver of the land where we want both property owners to try and work that out before we move forward. So it was tabled. There was no decision made tonight.
And we're not asking to subdivide, this is like a one last split for Cheryl, like.
Right.
We're not doing construction or roads, so she doesn't want to be forced to sell any property. Right, so it's a 28, I mean, this is like really as far as we've ever seen it with.
So Cindy, with that said, Gary is here. Discussing the Holman property split. That whether it's a part of it or not part of it, the fact of the matter is the meeting time was, he just showed me, was at 7 PM. So with all this in mind and knowing that we tabled it. For no other reason than trying to get this 10-foot area resolved between them, and that we said we would take it up in the next 30 days at our next meeting to make a decision one way or the other. How would you suggest that we as a planning commission move forward because he had the wrong start time?
And so I have found that email and I apologize profusely. I must have, the two numbers are right next to each other and I clearly made an error when I typed that. As far as what could happen now, I'm not sure that, well, I don't know obviously what the Tupis would have said if they had been here at 6 o'clock as feedback for that. So I think it's okay if you want to take that feedback. You have already made the motion though at the same time.
Right.
So I don't know that you can really,
I can't have another public hearing because I already closed it. And I think there's rules in terms of noticing it. So the thing is, the notice that went out to property owners has the wrong time on it.
no, this is what they're referring to as an email that I sent just to them.
No, the city of Credit River notice of public hearings, preliminary plat, it has a 7 PM time on it.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, this isn't an email. This is from Karen Donovan, city clerk. It was mailed. It's a mail.
Okay.
So we have the wrong time on it.
So again, back to this, what do we do from what?
Gary, we can listen to, I'd be willing to listen, but I'm not sure I can have another public hearing.
I mean, what we can do.
Yeah, we would have to notice another public hearing.
Yeah, we would have to notice another public hearing, to fix that.
Because this is just, I mean, it's a very uncomplicated, like, property sale. We're not developing, we're not building roads, there's no developer agreement. There's no stormwater ponding, there's virtually zero issues other than just the two neighbors talking. And Cheryl's been working on trying to get this done for quite some time, meeting all the criteria. Now she's in, deposits are in, and she's trying to move forward with getting some estate planning done. The planning commission is an advisory to the council. Is there any way we can be on the agenda for the council on Monday and have one of the representatives from the planning commission there to represent the table hearing?
So, regardless, the way that I had worded, even if the planning commission had taken action tonight, I wouldn't have put it on the city council agenda as per my staff report for next Monday because there were still unresolved issues with septic and some other things.
So septic, I think we're all in agreement this week that got all resolved, and Mary at Scott County had signed off on that. So that was off the table, and so
Mary has not signed off on it to us yet.
Okay, so that's why we should have done the meeting tonight, because the last email I have from Mary that she said the application was complete and everything looked fine. We have 2 alternate sites. So I'm just trying to move forward for Cheryl Holman, who's, has property rights also, and she has now met all the requirements and should have been on the agenda tonight. And so now I gotta go back to her and tell her that, she's not. Time is of the essence, not for me, it's for Cheryl. She's the property owner, so to me, a month doesn't matter, but she is the one pushing very hard for her estate planning to get the contract that we have since last year ratified and done for some of her things, so.
We made our decision to table it because we didn't think there was an urgency because nobody from Cheryl wasn't here tonight to say.
We were under contract representing her as the developer, so I mean, we were
Okay.
here at the time we were posted, so that's why I'm saying it shouldn't have been tabled. We should have had the public hearing at 7 when it was posted, and I'm not trying to be difficult, but we just missed our whole month, I guess, of moving, but Cindy, you gotta correct me if I'm wrong, but even if the planning commission does or doesn't take an action, the planning commission is only advisory to the council. So if we can
Correct.
come on Monday and get on the agenda and have the council look at what is a very, very, very simple 28-acre split. I mean, this is like happens all the time, Credit River, every township in the county. It's really a no-brainer. I mean, there's really nothing that's an issue there. And we've had conversations this week to make sure that you guys have the right of way to a full 66 feet, and everybody's agreed to dedicate. So that really cleans up the Longview Lane issue for the city. And Cheryl's proved that she's got her septic site, so I don't see any reason why would be tabled or denied. I don't even know how the city really could deny Cheryl to be able to sell a 28-acre piece, so I'm just trying to figure out what in the process would be stopping the approval.
Okay, so like I said, right now, I have not received any confirmation. I just checked emails as well from Scott County Septic. The last email I got was from yesterday where Mary Von Eschen said that they're waiting for some updated information.
Okay, well, and I'm not gonna argue with the argument says, yes, you've got a complete application and that should have circulated on the same thread. But here nor there, we should have been able to get a recommendation from the planning commission tonight, subject to meeting those requirements to get us on the agenda for the council. So that a simple lot split doesn't take multiple meetings and all the time of the city. So again, is there a reason why we can't be on the agenda for the council? Even if the planning commission tabled the issue, if the council feels all the information is there for the approval, they're the deciding voice, you know, right? Because the planning commission really is just, I've seen councils override planning commissions. So I think the real approval is at the council level.
You're correct. The city council can obviously not take any recommendations that a planning commission makes, although that would not be super typical either. And as the planning commission is just a recommending body and the city council makes the final decision.
Right. If we had any issues that the planning commission had that didn't meet ordinance or require a variance or any kind of special consideration, I would totally concur that, no problem, but there's nothing here that the planning commission would have that would not meet Cheryl's, you know, property rights, ordinances, you know, acreage minimums, road dedication. I mean, everything's here. It's just a simple, it should almost be on a consent agenda.
There
This
was-
thing should just be like a one
Gary,
and done.
Gary, there were some questions regarding a strip of land.
That Cheryl owns that which should not be forced for a neighbor to buy or sell. If we give the whole right of way of 66 feet, Cheryl shouldn't be forced to sell that 10 feet to anybody. Right? It's a 28-acre lot and it shouldn't be forced. The government shouldn't be telling one property owner to get rid of 10 feet with the other. Cheryl put that specifically there when she sold that 10-acre lot because she did not want a driveway coming out with headlights in her front yard. And so she doesn't want to sell that 10 acres to the neighbor and she shouldn't be forced to. Now, that might be a different issue if we come in and plat the smaller lots and we have to design a whole plat, then we would take up that argument. But for her to simply split off 28 acres off of her whole farm there to do a one lot split. There's nothing here that doesn't meet the ordinance to do that. That's where I guess, I honestly thought this would be a consent agenda, just like yes and yes, because there really should be any conversation.
It wasn't, I came into the meeting thinking that too, but then we had a resident here that owns the property that's adjacent to the 10-foot strip. And we were trying to be cognizant of his concern with that 10-foot strip. He was going to try and work that out with Cheryl. And that's why we tabled. Okay. And I'm sorry. I did not know that you're under contract with Cheryl because you weren't here. So. Right.
Yes, for money's paid and everything's here. So, you know, I just think the city's totally out of line trying to bounce this back and say we're not going to approve it till the two neighbors work out a sense.
Yeah.
So Cindy, then
Cindy-
ultimately we're back to just how to resolve this issue. Wrong notice time went out. A meeting on that property has closed for as far as public comment, even though Mr. Tupy, who is the representative for the Holmans, had the wrong time where he couldn't be present to state his case. So he's asked that could it be possibly put on the city council agenda for Monday? From
and
you,
like
is
I-
that even a possibility?
Like I already said, I wasn't putting it on the city council agenda for Monday, even if you guys had made a recommendation tonight, because I was still waiting on information from Scott County Septic at a minimum.
So Cindy, can we not move forward then with an approval on Monday, subject to that happening? Can we get approvals?
No,
All the
no,
time?
we can't do that subject to, we do need Scott County's approval on the septic.
But you'd have it before Monday, and I'm saying we wouldn't ask for the approval on Monday night without that coming. So I'm just trying not to cause Cheryl another, if it's another planning commission meeting and another hearing and another council, she's out 6 weeks. On a really, really simple sale that, you know, she's met all of her requirements. She's paid her septic designer, she's paid the engineer, she's got a new survey, all the fees are into the city. I mean, this is a really, really simple one, you know, it's not even a lot split. It's just her selling 28 acres off of her whole parcel. She's wrapped 3 sides by road. And one property owner that's on a 10-acre lot with no house there, there's just not a compelling issue where we could ever tell her no. So that's what I'm saying, it's just, I just, and I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just, really, she was really hoping to get this done and closed. Personal issues with her, she's trying to get this to happen, and I don't want to go back to her and tell her she's got a 6-week delay.
So what I'm hearing is that Cheryl does not want to work with Mr. Schmidt. That she just wants to do what she's proposing. And so Cindy, what about doing this? What about, do we need another public hearing, or can we just have a special planning commission meeting scheduled? And I don't know what the notice is for that, 10 days or whatever. And look at this again, now that we have some new information that Cheryl doesn't want to work with anybody in terms of that little piece of land. And we relook at it, and then we get it on the planning, on the city council's meeting, the second city council meeting in April, since it wasn't going to be on the first one anyway.
Commissioner Market, the only issue I would have with that is not Mr. Tooby's fault, because of the notice, but the fact that we have made a formal recommendation and close the hearing. So I just want to make sure that we're doing it correctly and legally within the rules that we put it. So I agree with you that if there's a possibility of having an additional meeting in a shorter period of time, we'd have to check with Mr. Schmitz, because we kind of made the recommendation that he be allowed another 30 days. It's kind of a quagmire here. And so Cindy, you kind of were here present for the first part of that meeting. We're going to need some suggestions from you or from the city attorney as to how we proceed with this.
I would.
Well, especially given the reason why you were trying to give additional time, and that you specifically said that.
Yeah. Can we go into recess and call Bob and find out what we need to do?
Yeah, I can
Let her do that.
let me do that, and I'm just gonna put myself on mute for a minute, okay?
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
I'm
Yep.
not going to close the meeting, then we'll just wait for a response.
Yeah, I guess, my name is Steve Olson, Judy. And you want me to go up there?
Uh,
I just had a question as far as, if tabling it, or
Why don't you?
Hold it. We're in recess. So let's make sure we stay consistent.
Should I just wait here?
Yeah, you can stay. We're just in recess. So I tell you what, when we come back on, then you're free to do whatever's necessary. Thank you. Everybody turn the mics off.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair,
Cindy, are you there?
I am here. Thank you.
Did you have a
So
chance to talk to Bob?
I did. I spoke to Attorney Rupee and he suggested that given the circumstances that we would need to re-advertise the meeting. Especially given that there are definitely opponents to the project. To ensure that we have correct advertising done. The earliest that we can advertise and then subsequently get it on a council agenda anyways would be your regular meeting in April. There isn't a way to advertise and get it on an earlier council agenda still. And again, regardless, I was not putting it on next week's council agenda anyways. So, because there were still those unresolved issues. That per the memo, I said that they would be waiting until they were resolved.
So, Mr. Chair, upon hearing Cindy's advice from our city attorney, I would strongly advise that we follow that.
I agree. So I'm not going to accept any more comments tonight, and I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Olson. Do I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Tandy. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion to adjourn is carried. Thank you, everyone.
Remember, folks, remember about our open meeting one?
Yeah.
Somebody comes up to the comment, you don't start discussing.
Yeah.
Cindy, thank you.
Thank you.